There is a peculiar mystery that lives in every human heart, the desire to be seen, not merely looked at, not admired, not even loved in the ordinary sense of affection, but seen, known in one's essence, recognized in one's depth. This longing is ancient. It is the ache of the soul calling to itself through the forms of other human beings. And it is this longing, this eternal seeking to behold oneself reflected in another, that gives birth to what we call love. When I speak of love, I do not mean the fleeting passion of the moment, nor the sentimental ideal we celebrate in poetry and song. I speak of that deeper movement of the psyche that binds one soul to another as though guided by a hidden law of nature. The Greeks called it eros, a god that does not belong solely to pleasure or romance, but to the very mystery of creation itself. It is eros that draws opposites together, that unites spirit and matter, that urges us toward wholeness. Yet, in our blindness, we often believe that love is something we find outside of ourselves, something we receive from another. But love, in its deepest truth, is not a possession to be gained. It is a revelation, a mirror held up by another human being through which the soul perceives its own depths. Every person we love becomes such a mirror. Through them, we come to see the unspoken and unacknowledged aspects of ourselves. This is why love can be both ecstatic and terrifying. It awakens us to the beauty we have forgotten within ourselves and to the shadows we have refused to face. For the beloved does not only reflect our light, but also our darkness. That is the alchemy of relationship. It transforms the unconscious into experience, the unknown into the known, the hidden into the visible. In this way, love is not merely an emotion, but a path of individuation, a sacred process through which we come to recognize, integrate, and ultimately transcend the dualities within us. When you fall in love, you do not simply meet another person, you encounter your own soul in disguise. This truth is not always pleasant. It is not the romantic dream our culture teaches us to chase, the romantic illusion that another person will complete us, heal us, redeem us, is perhaps the most seductive of all the archetypal fantasies. And yet it is necessary, for it serves as the beginning of a deeper journey. It is only through the illusion that we come to recognize the reality. We must first be deceived by love before we can understand its truth. In the beginning of love, all seems divine. The beloved appears luminous, transcendent, as though touched by the gods themselves. This is not mere delusion, but projection. The psyche, in its yearning for wholeness, casts the inner image of its divine counterpart upon the other person. What we see in those first moments of rapture is not the other as they truly are, but the reflection of our own soul's lost image. That image is what I have called the anima in a man and the animus in a woman, the inner figure of the opposite gender that represents the totality of the soul's unrealized potential. The anima is not merely the feminine side of a man, nor the animus simply the masculine aspect of a woman. They are symbols of the inner beloved, the spiritual bridge between the conscious self and the depths of the unconscious. When we fall in love, These archetypal figures awaken. They rise from the depths of the unconscious, closed in the form of another human being. The beloved thus becomes the carrier of our inner world, the one through whom we rediscover the lost dimensions of our being. This is why love feels fated. Why we say, I have met my other half. It is as if something ancient and inevitable has occurred. But this experience, though divine in its beginning, is not meant to last in its original form. The projection cannot endure, for as time passes, reality intrudes, the real person behind the ideal image begins to emerge, and the luminous god or goddess we thought we had found reveals themselves to be all too human. This moment when the projection collapses is the turning point in every love. It is here that most relationships falter, for few are willing to face what this collapse reveals. The disillusionment feels like betrayal, yet it is not betrayal, it is truth. The beloved was never the perfect image we imagined, but the living soul, wounded and incomplete, just as we are. To love truly is to stand before this revelation and not turn away. It is to accept that the divine we saw in the other was a reflection of our own inner divinity, and that the flaws we now perceive are reflections of our own unconscious shadow. If we can remain present in that moment, not with blame or bitterness, but with humility, then love transforms from a projection into a mirror, and the mirror does not lie. In that mirror, we see the unhealed places of our own soul. We see our dependency, our fear of abandonment, our need for validation, our hunger for control, all the wounds of childhood, all the shadows we have exiled, all the unlived parts of ourselves, they all return to us through the face of the beloved. Love, in this sense, is the great revealer of the soul. It is no accident that in myths and fairy tales, love is often portrayed as a trial, a task. Are they sent an ordeal? Psyche must descend into the underworld to reunite with Eros. Orpheus must journey into the depths to retrieve his beloved Eurydice. These stories speak of the same truth that love demands we venture into our own unconscious, that we confront the hidden forces that shape our destiny. When two souls meet, their unconscious worlds also meet. The invisible forces of archetype and instinct, of shadow and complex, begin to interact in mysterious ways. What one does not see in oneself, one will encounter in the other. What one represses, the other will express. The unconscious seeks wholeness through this exchange, even when the ego resists it. Thus, every relationship becomes a stage upon which the drama of individuation unfolds. This is why relationships are not meant to be perfect, but transformative. The friction, the conflict, the misunderstanding, these are not signs of failure, but of growth. For only through the tension of opposites can a new synthesis emerge. Love is not the avoidance of pain, but the courage to face it together. The alchemists knew this. They spoke of conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites through which base matter is transformed into gold. This was not merely a chemical operation, but a spiritual one. In the alchemical vessel, elements of fire and water, light and darkness, male and female, Life and death were united in a process of dissolution and rebirth. So too, in the vessel of relationship, the opposites within and between two individuals are brought together not to annihilate each other, but to create something higher. The relationship becomes the crucible in which the ego is purified, the unconscious made conscious, and the soul transfigured. But this process is not gentle. The fire of love burns. It consumes illusions. It demands surrender not to another person, but to the deeper process that is working through both. To stay in such a fire requires great courage. It requires the willingness to endure the death of the old self so that something new may be born. Most people flee this fire. They mistake its heat for destruction, not realizing it is the very heat that refines the soul. They abandon love when it ceases to gratify the ego, not understanding that true love begins precisely where the ego's demands end. If you can endure the alchemy of love, if you can stay present when the mirror reveals not only beauty but brokenness, then you will discover something extraordinary. The love that once seemed to come from another begins to radiate from within. You realize that what you sought in the other was always your own essence calling you home, for in the final analysis, love is not between two beings. It is the recognition of oneness beneath the illusion of separation. Every beloved is a messenger of the self, the divine center that seeks to unite all opposites, to make conscious what is hidden, and to bring us into harmony with the whole. The path of love then is the path of individuation itself. Through the other, we come to know ourselves. Through the mirror of relationship, we come to see the face of the self. And yet this is only the beginning, for once the mirror has shown us our reflection, we must learn to see beyond it, to love, not for what it reveals about us, but for what it awakens in us. Love, when purified by awareness, becomes no longer a need, but a calling. No longer a hunger, but a devotion. It is to this deeper mystery that we must now turn, the mystery of how love, once it becomes a mirror of the self, transforms into the alchemy of the soul's awakening. When love ceases to be a mere exchange between egos and begins to serve the unfolding of the soul, a subtle shift occurs in the inner world. What once felt like possession, desire, or dependence becomes a form of initiation. The heart, once a battlefield of longing and fear, begins to awaken to its true purpose, to hold the tension of opposites without collapsing into despair or illusion. We are accustomed to thinking of love as harmony, as the blending of two souls into one. Yet, in truth, love is sustained by polarity without difference. There is no attraction without opposition. There is no growth. The masculine and feminine principles, not as genders, but as archetypal forces, must each maintain their integrity, even as they seek union. When one devours or imitates the other, love these, but when each remains rooted in their own center, a living current flows between them, an energy that nourishes both without destroying either. This dance of opposites mirrors the eternal rhythm of the psyche itself. The conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow, the known and the unknown, all move in a perpetual dialogue. each calling forth the other. In relationships, this dialogue becomes visible. We project our unconscious contents onto the other, and through their reflection, we are given the chance to recognize what lies hidden within us. But recognition does not come easily. The ego resists seeing what it has long denied. It clings to its images, its roles, its illusions of control. Thus, the mirror of love often shatters before our eyes. We accuse, we withdraw, we despair, not realizing that it is not the other who has betrayed us, but our own unwillingness to face the truth of ourselves. Love, in its truest form, is merciless toward illusion. It will strip away every falsehood, every disguise, every convenient lie we tell ourselves. It will humble the proud, break the hardened heart, and expose the wounds we thought were long healed. To love deeply is to be wounded deeply, for the heart must be open to the very core, and what lies there is not always light. There is no transformation without suffering. This is a hard truth, one that the modern spirit resists. We seek pleasure without pain, intimacy without vulnerability, growth without loss. But the psyche does not evolve through comfort. It evolves through conflict, through the confrontation with that which we fear, and yet secretly need to integrate. When love wounds us, when it breaks our defenses and exposes our fragility, it is not punishing us. It is inviting us into wholeness. The pain we feel is the friction of two worlds colliding, the world of the ego, which seeks to preserve itself, and the world of the soul, which seeks to expand beyond itself. The heart, caught between these worlds, becomes the crucible of transformation. In that crucible, many resist. They run from love when it ceases to gratify their ideal, or they cling desperately when it begins to fade. But both movements, flight and attachment, are expressions of fear. The true task is neither to flee nor to possess, but to endure, to remain present in the burning, to allow the fire to purify rather than destroy. This is the alchemy of love. It is not the merging of two egos, but the transmutation of the self through encounter. Every relationship that touches us deeply becomes an experiment in this alchemical fire. Sometimes the union endures, sometimes it dissolves. But in either case, something greater is being formed within the depths. The alchemists spoke of the nigredo, the blackening, that stage when all light seems lost, when one is plunged into darkness and despair. In love, this is the moment when illusion dies. The beloved no longer reflects a divine image. The ideal has turned to dust. Many believe this to be the end of love, but it is only the beginning. The nigredo is the necessary descent before renewal. If we can stay with the darkness, if we can resist the temptation to flee into distraction or resentment, something begins to change. Out of the ashes of the old projection arises a new vision, one not born of fantasy but of reality. We begin to see the beloved as they truly are, not as our savior, not as our mirror, but as a soul walking beside us in their own struggle toward wholeness. To see another human being in this way, stripped of illusion, yet loved all the same, is one of the rarest experiences in life. It requires that we release the childish demand to be completed by another and accept instead the solitude of our own being. For only when we can stand alone can we truly meet another as an equal. Solitude is the foundation of all genuine relationship. Without it, love becomes dependence. With it, love becomes communion. Most people fear solitude because it confronts them with the vastness of their own inner world. But solitude, rightly understood, is not isolation. It is the sacred space in which the soul grows roots, where we learn to listen to the whispers of the unconscious, to encounter our shadow, to befriend the self. It is through solitude that we learn the difference between love and attachment. Attachement demande. Love allows, attachment clings. Love gives space. Attachment seeks security. Love seeks truth. To love truly, we must first accept that love will never belong to us. It moves through us, not from us. When two people meet from this inner wholeness, their relationship becomes something quite different. It is no longer a battle of needs, but a dialogue of souls. The energy between them is no longer one of possession, but of mutual transformation. Each becomes a mirror, yes, but not to trap the other in reflection, rather to awaken them to their own light. In such love, suffering still exists, but it is no longer meaningless. Pain becomes the price of depth, not the mark of failure. Every misunderstanding becomes a lesson in humility. Every separation, a call to greater awareness. Love ceases to be a demand for comfort and becomes an invitation to consciousness. In this light, we can understand why love has so often been described as divine madness. It unravels the ordered structure of the ego. It disorients our certainties. It plunges us into chaos. And yet, through that very chaos, it brings forth new life. The old self dies. And from its death, a larger self begins to emerge. It is no coincidence that the language of love and the language of mysticism are often the same. The mystic and the lover both seek union with the Divine One through God, the other through the human. But in truth, both are seeking the same thing, the realization of oneness. When love becomes the mirror of the self, the beloved is no longer merely another person. They are the gate through which the soul enters its own depth. To love is to stand before the mystery of the universe, naked and vulnerable, and to say yes. This yes is not the naive surrender of the dreamer, but the courageous assent of the awakened. It is the willingness to be undone, to be transformed, to be reborn in the fire of relationship, for in that fire everything falls, burns away, leaving only what is real, and what is real is eternal. Love, then, is the path by which the soul remembers itself through the mirror of another. We discover the infinite within, but to reach this realization, we must pass through every stage of loss, illusion, darkness, and renewal. We must accept that love's purpose is not to make us happy, but to make us whole. And wholeness, my friends, is never painless. It is not comfort. that the soul seeks but completeness. It is not peace that calls us, but transformation. The universe, in its mysterious wisdom, uses love as its most potent instrument of awakening. Through the joy and the grief of the heart, it brings us face to face with ourselves. The question then is not whether love will test us, but whether we will allow those tests to make us conscious. For if we can endure love's trials with open eyes and open hearts, we will find that every wound becomes a doorway, every ending a beginning, every loss a revelation. It is there in the stillness after heartbreak, in the quiet after conflict, in the emptiness after illusion that the true alchemy begins. And it is to that final stage of love's transformation, the point where human love becomes divine understanding, that we now turn. When one has passed through the storm of love's illusions, through the breaking and the burning, through the long dark night of the heart, there dawns a light unlike any other. It is not the bright light of passion or infatuation, but a quiet and steady radiance, the light of consciousness. It does not dazzle, but illumines gently, revealing things as they are. This light is born not from desire, but from understanding. It is the light of the self shining through the ruins of the ego's demands. At this stage, love becomes something almost sacred. It no longer serves the ego's hunger to possess or to be affirmed. It becomes a vessel for the soul's unfolding. The beloved is seen not as an object of longing, but as a living symbol, a manifestation of the divine mystery that each of us carries within. In their eyes, we recognize not only beauty but also suffering, not only grace but shadow. And through this recognition, compassion is born. Compassion is the fruit of mature love. It arises when the heart has suffered enough to know that every being, even the one who has wounded us, is also struggling toward wholeness. Compassion does not mean indulgence, nor does it mean submission. It means seeing through the eyes of the soul rather than the judgments of the ego. It is to love, not because the other satisfies us, but because we recognize in them the same longing that moves within ourselves, a longing to be real, to be seen, to be whole. When love ripens into this form, the relationship itself becomes a temple. Two souls standing face to face serve not their desires, but the greater mystery that unites them. They no longer seek to change one another, but to witness one another's becoming. Each becomes both the mirror and the guardian of the other's inner journey. Yet such love is not constant, nor is it ever complete. It moves in cycles of union and separation, of closeness and distance. It breathes like the tides of the sea. To expect it to remain fixed is to kill it. Love that is alive must be allowed to move, to shift, to evolve. Just as the psyche transforms through time, so too must the forms of our relationships change if they are to remain vessels of life. There are moments when even the deepest love must yield to solitude once more. For the path of individuation, the journey toward the realization of the self, is ultimately a solitary one. No one can walk it for us. And yet, paradoxically, we cannot walk it without others. It is through encounter, through relationship, that the self reveals its hidden faces. Each person we love, each soul we touch, becomes a page in the book of our becoming. Some remain with us for a chapter, others for only a line, but all are part of the same unfolding story, the story of consciousness awakening to itself. If we look deeply enough, we will see that love is not an accident, nor is it a matter of chance. It is the psyche's way of bringing us into contact with what we most need to integrate. The people who attract us most intensely are often those who carry the very qualities we have exiled from ourselves. We sense in them something both familiar and forbidden, and this magnetic pull is the soul's call to healing. This is why love can feel both ecstatic and terrifying. It draws us toward that which we most desire and yet most fear. It threatens the boundaries of our identity, exposes the fractures in our defenses, and demands a surrender that feels like death. For indeed, in every great love, something must die: the illusion of separateness, the pride of the ego, the fantasy of control. And yet what dies is not truly lost. Out of that, death arises a deeper life, a consciousness that is capable of holding both joy and sorrow without being torn apart. This is the alchemical secret, that through dissolution comes transformation. The lead of our pain becomes the gold of awareness. When two souls reach this point, they may remain together or part ways. The outer form of the relationship matters less than the inner truth that has been revealed. Some must separate so that the process of individuation can continue. Others remain to embody the union of opposites in daily life. Both paths serve the same end, the realization of wholeness. The union of opposites is not a static harmony, but a living tension, an éternelle danse. The masculine and feminine, the conscious and the unconscious, the love of self and the love of other, all must be held together in awareness. When we can bear this tension without collapsing into either extreme, we participate in the mystery of the self. And so love at its highest becomes an expression of the self's unfolding. It is no longer merely personal, it is transpersonal, a force that moves through us, guiding the evolution of consciousness itself. We become instruments of something larger, something that seeks to reconcile all opposites, to unite all fragments into a single vision of being. To live in this awareness is to live with reverence. One sees the beloved not as property, but as a manifestation of the divine play, the eternal dance of light and shadow that creates the world. Every embrace, every argument, every silence becomes part of that sacred rhythm. The relationship ceases to be about satisfaction and becomes a form of service to the mystery of life, to the growth of the soul, to the birth of greater consciousness. But such love demands courage. It requires that we remain awake even when our instincts cry out for comfort. It asks that we forgive even when forgiveness seems impossible. It calls us to hold the pain of separation without hardening the heart. For only through such endurance does love reveal its final truth, that the beloved we seek is none other than the self itself. The outer beloved, the one we can touch, see, and lose, is but a reflection of the inner beloved. the divine image within the soul, every human love is a rehearsal for that ultimate reunion. Through each encounter, the soul learns to recognize its own face, to draw nearer to its source. This is why, when love has run its course and the outer relationship ends, something still remains. We carry within us an inner presence, a memory not of the person, but of the transformation that took place through them. They have become part of our being. They have served their purpose in the alchemy of our soul. And so, perhaps love's true purpose is not to give us happiness, but to make us conscious, to tear the veils from our eyes until we can see the divine in all things. To love is to suffer, yes, but it is also to awaken, and awakening, though painful, is the only true joy. When we understand this, we no longer fear the endings, the losses, the silences. We see them as part of the rhythm of the great work, the opus of the soul. We learn to trust the process, to surrender to the wisdom of the unconscious, to allow life to move through us without resistance. Then love becomes not something we do, but something we are. It flows from us naturally, without demand or fear. It is not directed only toward one person, but toward all of existence. It becomes compassion, reverence, participation in the mystery of being itself. In this final stage, the alchemy is complete. The heart, once torn by longing, becomes whole. The opposites, love and loss, joy and sorrow, self and other, are reconciled within a single awareness. The soul, having found its reflection in another, now recognizes that the mirror was never outside. It was always within. And so I say to you, love bravely, suffer consciously, and remain faithful to the process. For every heartbreak is a doorway, and every union a step towards the eternal. The path of love is the path of the self-winding, perilous, but radiant beyond measure. When you next look into the eyes of the one you love, ask yourself, do I see them, or do I see my own soul calling me home?